TMZ is reporting wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has died at 71 years old.
It was a moment so shocking, so surreal, that even the most seasoned wrestling fans could scarcely believe what had unfolded. On what was expected to be a routine episode of WWE SmackDown, tragedy struck with a force that rattled not just the WWE universe, but the entire world of sports entertainment. Hulk Hogan, the living embodiment of wrestling's golden age, passed away suddenly at the age of 71 during the broadcast, sending shockwaves of sorrow across arenas, homes, and hearts worldwide. Known by birth as Terry Bollea, Hogan was more than a wrestler. He was a symbol of power, charisma, and larger-than-life spectacle. For millions, he was wrestling. To witness the abrupt extinguishing of that flame, especially under the bright lights of WWE's global stage, felt like losing a piece of history itself. The evening had begun like any other, filled with anticipation and intensity, with fans tuned in for a scheduled main event between Solo Sikoa and Kevin Owens. But fate had other plans. In the minutes before the match was set to begin, rumors began to circulate backstage that something tragic had occurred. Word spread like wildfire. Hulk Hogan had collapsed. A flurry of EMTs raced to the gorilla position, but by the time the cameras cut away and concern settled in, the gravity of the situation became clear. Hogan was gone. The show would go on, but no one watching would ever forget that night. It was the night the immortal fell, not in battle, but in real life. A hero, a colossus, and a pioneer had taken his final bow under the same roof where so many of his triumphs once echoed. The final curtain call, Hogan's last walk at Madison Square Garden. In a poignant twist of fate, Hulk Hogan's final WWE appearance took place just hours before his death, during a commercial break at the legendary Madison Square Garden. It was unannounced, impromptu, and yet unforgettable. As the lights dimmed for intermission, Hogan's entrance music played softly, more a whisper than a roar, and then there he was. Still larger than life, still with that unmistakable presence, he emerged from the curtain with his signature strut, flexing his biceps and pointing toward the heavens. Fans in attendance erupted into a thunderous ovation, unaware that they were bearing witness to a final, unintentional farewell. For a few beautiful seconds, time seemed to rewind. It wasn't the 2020s anymore. It was 1987, 1991, 2002. It was every era of Hulkamania rolled into one living memory. Backstage, colleagues later described Hogan as light-hearted and joyful. He was seen sharing old war stories with longtime friends, offering advice to younger talent, and even joking about possibly getting back in the ring for one last promo at WrestleMania. He was alive in every sense of the word, said one anonymous WWE staffer. Full of energy, full of love for the business. Yet that joy was cruelly cut short. Mere minutes after that brief appearance, Hogan collapsed near gorilla position, the nerve center of WWE's backstage operations. Emergency medical teams administered CPR and rushed to stabilize him, but by the time he arrived at a nearby medical facility, he had passed. Preliminary reports pointed to cardiac arrest as the cause of death, and though the official autopsy is pending, the result was painfully clear. Wrestling had lost its greatest showman. Immortal legacy. The man who made wrestling a global phenomenon. It is impossible to quantify Hulk Hogan's contribution to professional wrestling without slipping into hyperbole, because the truth is, no exaggeration is too large. Hogan didn't just participate in wrestling's boom during the 1980s and 90s, he created it. Without him, there might not be a WrestleMania, a WWE network, or global tours that sell out stadiums in minutes. His body slam of Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 wasn't just a move. It was a cultural moment, a visual metaphor for the triumph of good over evil. That match alone redefined what wrestling could be, not just spectacle, but myth. Then, years later, Hogan shocked the world by reinventing himself in WCW as Hollywood Hogan, turning heel and forming the infamous New World Order. It was bold, it was dangerous, and it changed the game again. Beyond the ring, Hogan's influence seeped into every corner of popular culture. From hosting Saturday Night Live to starring in action comedies like Mr. Nanny, appearing on cereal boxes, and voicing animated versions of himself, Hulk Hogan was everywhere. His catchphrases, "What you gonna do, brother?" and "Say your prayers and eat your vitamins," became household slogans. He blurred the lines between athlete, entertainer, and superhero. Triple H, reflecting on Hogan's death at a post-show press conference, summarized it best. "Everything we do today, from the way we present superstars to the way we build stadium shows, exists because of Hogan. He was the blueprint. Hogan was the original main eventer, the face that launched 1,000 careers, and the reason millions of children in the 1980s believed that good guys really could win. His passing wasn't just the end of a man's life. It was the closing chapter in the most important volume of wrestling history. The Bloodline Tribute. Power humbled in the face of legacy. WWE is a world where personas are curated, rivalries are theatrical, and emotions are often scripted. But what unfolded on that Friday night transcended the boundaries of storyline and character. The Bloodline, WWE's current most dominant and feared faction, stepped into a new kind of spotlight, one of reverence. Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu, and their wise counsel Paul Heyman, so often cloaked in intimidation and ruthlessness, walked down the ramp with somber expressions and black attire. The gold belts they typically flaunted were absent, their war paint gone. They had come not as champions or villains, but as men. Men mourning the loss of the icon who made all their careers possible. The arena dimmed, the screen flickered, and then came a tribute package of haunting beauty. A slow montage of Hogan's greatest moments, the red and yellow robes, the roaring crowds, the iconic matches, played to a stripped-down piano rendition of Real American. There were no crowd pops, no firework blasts, no backstage antics. Just silence. Just awe. As the final image faded, a silhouette of Hogan waving to the crowd in Madison Square Garden, his theme music played once more. Only this time, it was not a celebration. It was a requiem, Solo Sikoa's speech, a warrior's eulogy for the Immortal One. When Solo Sikoa took the microphone, fans held their breath. Known for his cold silence, for his brutal efficiency and thunderous presence, Solo was not one to show vulnerability. But on this night, he set aside his tribal duties to speak not as the enforcer of the bloodline, but as a fan, a child who once believed in miracles. With a subdued tone and glassy eyes, he said, "This isn't about titles. This isn't about bloodline business. This is about paying respect to a man who inspired millions." Before the island of relevancy, there was Hulkamania. Before I believed in myself, I believed in him. The words cut deep. They weren't poetic, but they were raw, real. He spoke about watching Hogan on VHS tapes as a child, standing in front of the TV, ripping apart makeshift shirts, and mimicking the poses. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was a hero, Solo continued. He taught me about strength, about faith, about standing tall even when the odds were against you. Tonight, we honor him the only way we know how, with respect. Jacob Fatu raised a bandana with Hogan's signature stitched across it, then laid it gently in the center of the ring. Tama Tonga lowered his head and extended his hand to the heavens, a warrior's salute. Paul Heyman, the architect of many wrestling dynasties, stood silently with tears in his eyes, his hand over his heart. In a company where everything is choreographed down to the second, this moment was allowed to breathe, to ache, to live. Echoes through generations, from Hogan to the Bloodline and beyond. The symbolism was striking. Here stood the Bloodline, the heirs to wrestling's throne, paying tribute to the emperor who came before them. For decades, Hogan carried the weight of the industry on his shoulders. He walked so these men could run. His path through wrestling's most difficult terrain cleared the road for generations who followed. The multicultural dominance of today's WWE, its global inclusivity, and its worldwide fandom, it all began with one man in red and yellow, flexing on a stage that had never before seen such grandeur. In death, Hogan united people in a way only legends can. Rivals across companies, former foes, Hollywood friends, and lifelong fans all echoed the same sentiment. The world would never see another like him. Roman Reigns, currently on hiatus, posted simply, "Without Hulk, there is no tribal chief." John Cena, once billed as the next Hulk Hogan, tweeted a heartfelt message. "Thank you for carrying us. Thank you for teaching us. Rest in power, Immortal One." A farewell, fit for an icon. As SmackDown came to a close, the camera panned once more to the empty ring, now darkened except for a single spotlight on the red and yellow feathered boa draped across the top rope. The crowd, once deafening, had grown quiet. A collective hush fell over the WWE universe, a silence that said more than any chant or cheer could. The final image of the night wasn't of chaos or combat. It was of stillness, of memory, of legacy. And so, Hulk Hogan's final WWE moment wasn't a scripted farewell, a staged retirement match, or a Hall of Fame encore. It was something far more profound. It was real. He left the world the way he entered it, larger than life, beloved by millions, and forever etched into the hearts of those who believed in the power of Hulkamania. He built the house we stand in. The wrestling world bows to Hulk Hogan. In the annals of professional wrestling, few figures have loomed as large or as enduring as Hulk Hogan. To many, he was more than a performer. He was the heart of a generation, a symbol of strength, charisma, and resilience. With his iconic handlebar mustache, yellow and red bandanas, and larger-than-life catchphrases, Hogan, born Terry Jean Bollea, transcended wrestling to become a pop culture icon. But on this particular night, the tone was different. The WWE universe, typically rowdy and electric with cheers and boos, fell into a solemn hush. The man who had once electrified sold-out arenas with his mere presence had passed, and the entire industry gathered not only to mourn him, but to honor the towering legacy he left behind. The emotional core. Tama Tonga speaks for a generation. One of the most emotionally charged moments of the night came from an unexpected source. Tama Tonga, the normally fiery and unpredictable enforcer of the Bloodline. Known for his raw aggression and often volatile in-ring demeanor, Tama laid down his armor for a moment of vulnerable honesty. His eyes glassed with unshed tears, and the thunder in his voice softened as he stepped into the center of the ring. "There are people in this business who wrestle," Tama said, his words slow and deliberate. "And then there are people who are wrestling. Hogan didn't just compete. He carried this entire world on his back." Tama's tribute resonated because it came not from polished rehearsals or corporate mandates, but from the soul of a man raised in wrestling royalty, the son of Haku, a fierce competitor of the golden era, and a man who understood deeply what it means to belong to a dynasty. We talk about bloodlines. We talk about legacy. But Hogan? Hogan was the legacy, he said, his voice cracking as he looked directly into the camera. He taught us to believe in something bigger than ourselves. He taught us to believe in the power of unity, of resilience, of Hulkamania. You were that something, Hogan. Thank you for everything. In that moment, Tama Tonga wasn't just a wrestler. He became a mouthpiece for generations of talent who knew they stood on the shoulders of a giant. The Silent Storm, Jacob Fatu honors with simplicity and strength. If Tama Tonga brought the fire, Jacob Fatu brought the silence. The weight of grief held within a body built for destruction. Fatu, usually an intimidating force known for his ruthlessness as part of the bloodline, approached the ring without a single word. No entrance music, no pyro. Just a slow, deliberate walk to the center, where he knelt down and gently placed a yellow bandana on the canvas. That gesture, simple, almost imperceptible, spoke volumes. It was a direct reference to Hogan's most iconic look, the yellow headwear that once symbolized courage, determination, and larger-than-life showmanship. But in Fatu's hands, the bandana became something else entirely, a sacred offering, a symbolic surrender to the past, a recognition that without Hulk Hogan, men like him, Samoan warriors, proud sons of a lineage once overlooked, might never have had a place in the spotlight. Fatu eventually broke his silence. His voice, often thunderous, came out hoarse and raw. "This ain't for TV," he said. "This is real. Hogan gave us belief. He didn't care where you came from. Didn't care what color you were. If you loved this business, you were his brother." That simple sentiment brought many in the audience, and several hardened veterans at ringside, to tears. In a sport built on performance and illusion, Jacob Fatu reminded everyone that grief is the most real thing of all. The final word, Paul Heyman's reverent farewell. Then came Paul Heyman, the legendary advocate, creative mastermind, and longtime voice of both controversy and credibility. His appearance was not flashy. He wore a dark suit, devoid of his usual bombast. His face was pale, his expression etched with mourning. When he took the microphone, the audience leaned in. Not because he was about to provoke, but because he was about to remember. "I've seen Hulk Hogan at his best," Heyman began, his voice low and steady, "and I've seen him at his worst. But the one thing that never changed was this. Hogan lived for this business. He breathed it. He sacrificed for it. He bled for it. And in many ways, he died for it." Heyman's words were not sanitized. He acknowledged the complications, the controversies, the highs and lows of a career that spanned nearly 5 decades. But within those complexities, Heyman located Hogan's truth, a man who refused to let wrestling die during its darkest days, who carried Vince McMahon's vision on his broad shoulders, and who inspired countless others to chase the dream. "You can argue his legacy," Heyman continued. "That's fine. History will debate it for centuries. But what you cannot argue is this. Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, was one of one. Without him, none of us have a ring to wrestle in. None of us have a mic to speak into. None of us have a crowd to perform for." And with that, the bell tolled 10 times. A 10-bell salute, the most sacred tribute in professional wrestling. The arena, so often a cauldron of noise, stood in complete silence. No chants, no cheers, no boos, just stillness, just reverence. Fans around the world, it felt like saying goodbye to a hero. Social media exploded in a global chorus of mourning and celebration. Wrestling fans from across cultures and generations took to platforms like X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram to share their personal Hogan stories. Some recounted watching Hogan slam Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 with their parents. Others shared how they clung to his message of perseverance through childhood illnesses or family struggles. One post that went viral read, "I never thought I'd cry watching the Bloodline. But tonight, they spoke for all of us. That was real. That was beautiful." Another fan wrote, "Watching those tough men break down for Hogan reminded me how much wrestling is about family, even when the cameras stop rolling." These weren't just nostalgic fans. They were people who grew up in the shadow of Hulkamania, who absorbed his mantra, train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, as gospel, and who felt, in his death, the fading of something elemental to their youth. Hogan and the Bloodline, an unspoken bond that transcended eras. Though Hogan's prime occurred in a different era, long before the Bloodline's reign of dominance, there existed a quiet, powerful connection between the Hall of Famer and the current generation of Samoan royalty. Behind the scenes, Hogan had always taken a personal interest in up-and-coming talent. In the early 2000s, he frequently visited developmental territories like FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, offering wisdom, critiques, and encouragement. Among those he mentored were early members of the Anoa'i family, many of whom would go on to shape the very heart of WWE. Roman Reigns, now sidelined due to injury, has often credited Hogan as one of his earliest inspirations. In an interview from 2021, Reigns shared, "You can't dream of being the face of WWE without first understanding what Hogan did. He wasn't just the blueprint, he was the architect." Though he did not appear on the tribute broadcast, sources close to WWE revealed that Roman Reigns played a major role in producing the segment alongside Triple H. Together, they ensured that the tone was neither commercial nor performative, but deeply personal. "This wasn't a ratings stunt," one insider noted. "This was a family saying goodbye to one of its founding fathers." The future begins with remembrance. WWE announces Hogan Tribute Night. In response to the overwhelming reaction from fans and talent alike, WWE announced plans for a full Hulk Hogan Tribute Night on next week's edition of SmackDown. The special episode promises to bring together the biggest names from past and present, each offering their own tributes and memories of the man who helped shape the modern industry. Names confirmed include John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ric Flair, and The Rock. The latter shared his own message on social media. "No Rock without Hogan. You inspired us all. Rest in power, brother. Radir Hulkamania forever." WWE is also preparing a commemorative video package, merchandise honoring Hogan's legacy, and backstage interviews chronicling how Hogan touched the lives of both legends and rookies alike. A closing reflection, the man beyond the myth. As the dust settled and the final images of the tribute aired, Tama's tearful stare, Fatu's quiet gesture, Heyman's solemn farewell, the wrestling world was left not just with grief, but with gratitude. For all the controversies, all the debates, Hulk Hogan remains, undeniably, the man who brought pro wrestling from the fringes of athletic entertainment to the global stage. He was flawed, he was human, but he was also transformative. He was a bridge from the territory days to the era of WrestleMania, from muscle-bound brawlers to charismatic superstars. Without Hulk Hogan, there is no Attitude Era, no ruthless aggression, no Bloodline storyline captivating millions. In honoring him, WWE did more than mourn a legend. It reaffirmed that wrestling, at its core, is about connection, about memory, about the strange and beautiful family it creates. And for one night, The house that Hulk Hogan built stood still, bathed not in spotlight, but in love. We truly appreciate your support. Subscribe and be part of our journey.